Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency and Money podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, pharmacist and publisher, bringing you help succeeding in your career, health, and wealth before, during, and after residency. You can sign up for the email list at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com to get your free LOI template or get editing help working one-on-one with me at residency.teachable.com. Hey, before we get started with the show, I just wanted to talk to you quickly about the impact of each week with the NAPLEX. So really, this is something you can't control, and you're obviously not going to pick a pharmacy school based on their graduation date being earlier than other schools, but you can't take the NAPLEX until they send your official transcripts and conferral of graduation. So every week, if you're, let's say, $50 an hour, just to make it easy math, I get that most people are going to make more than that if they're not in residency. But if you're talking about $50 an hour, you're talking about $2,000 a week. So every week your transcripts are delayed and your NAPLEX is not done, MPJE is not done, then you're losing that $50 an hour or $2,000 a week. But if you fail the NAPLEX, you have to wait 45 days, which it's about 7 weeks. So you're talking a little bit less than $14,000. And the MPJE is every 30 days. And so we're talking about a little bit more than 4 weeks. So we're talking about a little more than $8,000. So again, I wanted to talk with my student this block because she's just really on the ball in terms of getting that NAPLEX studying done, aligning it with our APPEs, and I thought it would be really helpful to you guys as you're looking toward residency. But also, if you start to do that RX prep stuff, you start to do that residency preparation, it really comes out in the interviews. And so when you're starting to talk about those things, as soon as you get into the APPE, and you've already studied that part of RX prep before that APPE, let's say it's oncology as it is for her, then you seem like you know a lot more, but also that you took the time to do it shows a lot of initiative. Then they can train you at a higher level. Then when you take your interview, you are speaking at a higher level. So it may seem like RX prep should be a doorstop for you until the end of April or May when you start studying for it. But I personally think that you should be studying for the NAPLEX through the entirety of your APPEs. So I won't keep the show going, but again, I think Jerri had some great advice and really making it a lot easier for you to succeed in your APPEs and get better recommendations, and then doing a lot better in the APPEs. And so you're going to be better prepared for those interviews when they come. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Today I have Jerri Sanger, a P4 at the University of Iowa College of Pharmacy, who's on rotation with me in an academic rotation. And what she did was started to get her NAPLEX studying done a little bit early, make it align with the APPEs. And I wanted to talk to her about that and how she's going to kind of maybe lean into the NAPLEX studying as a way to not only do well in the APPEs, but also to prepare for residency interviews. So Jerri, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, first, tell us a little bit about yourself and, what you've done with pharmacy so far. And then you're looking toward residency. We wanted to see if we could help some other people who kind of maybe might want to leave NAPLEX studying and MPJE studying till the end, but maybe we could do that a little bit earlier.
So I want to do residency, and there's so much stress going into the 4th year. And residency interviews and stuff that I know that the NAPLEX is kind of something that's like weighing heavily on me, and I don't want to leave it to the last minute. So studying for it is of high importance, but it's also, there's so much material on it that I know it's something that I can't like cram in a short amount of time. It's going to be a long road ahead of me. So I thought that getting a plan together is going to be in my best benefit.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about residency and how many people take the BCPS after residency, that
actually thinking, well, maybe if I start studying for BCPS during residency, it might align better with, the individual rotations that I'm taking. So tell me a little bit about how Iowa does it. I know that there's some kind of review at the end, but you're going to be using RX Prep as kind of the foundation and using those chapters. So tell me a little bit about maybe your calendar and how much can you really get done in a month, I guess is one way to do it. How do you kind of acknowledge the time commitments you have to the API, but also what you want to do in terms of studying?
Yeah, so I tried to align it the best I could. So, for example, I have an oncology rotation coming up. And so during that period, I want to be studying things pertaining to heme-onc. And I have a hospital rotation coming up. And so there I want to be studying like sterile and non-sterile compounding and like hospital law. I have under that rotation to study that. So I tried to put things in categories that were similar. So as I'm going through the API, I'm studying those topics, but then I'm also hitting topics that don't really fit in. And so, for example, during my heme-onc one, since I'm going to be getting a lot of oncology, I have that to study, but it won't be something that I actually have to like spend a lot of time on because I'm getting such a good review during the API.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess, even studying a little bit before to kind of go through the heme-onc section and then, using that as preparation so that you're not kind of starting from square one. But tell me a little bit about some of the ones that didn't really fit great into APIs. So maybe things like biostatistics and those other topics. What are some topics that are just like, well, I'm just not going to get that in my clinicals?
Yeah, so biostats is one that I have to study in 3 different sections.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily always go with the API, but there are aspects of biostats within the APIs. So there are lots of times where you have to do journal clubs. So when I'm doing those journal clubs, really looking at calculating the hazard ratio or the intention to treat, making sure that I know what they are and how to calculate things like that.
Okay. And then, right now you have the book and you have those pieces, and the new RX Prep books, if I remember right, don't actually have questions in them. They've separated test bank from the book itself. Do you get access for a test bank, or is that something you just kind of have to start working on a little bit later on?
That you would have to purchase that, and I will purchase that eventually.
Okay.
But I think I'm going to wait to do that until maybe the spring because I want to focus really on doing the studying and then applying it as I kind of go.
Okay. If I remember right, there's some kind of split that you get it for like X number of months. And if you go for a lot more months, it's a lot more expensive, but a fewer months, it's a little bit less expensive.
Yeah, that's my reasoning behind it. A whole full year is like $300, whereas only 6 months is 180. So,
okay, yeah, no, that's definite savings. All right, well, what happens though is that you get into your clinicals, you get into your APIs, you've got your job, you've got all these other responsibilities, and then this little test called the MPJE all of a sudden becomes this thing. You're like, oh my gosh, oh yeah, that one too. So I saw we worked with TLDR Pharmacy to get their materials first, but tell me a little bit about how you're going to kind of split up MPJE and then, the federal part and then the part that's in the part that goes with your particular state.
Yeah, so I hadn't really thought much about studying for the MPJE. It kind of seemed like on the back burner, and the NAPLEX to me just seemed more important. And then in my first rotation, my preceptors both said that they thought the MPJE was harder. And so I listened to that. And then my next cycle, the pharmacist said the same exact thing. So I thought, maybe I should put some more effort into that and maybe move my studying timeline up for that. So I've heard mixed reviews. Some people say go and read all of the code, and some people say no, you don't need to read every single word of it, but you do need to be able to apply it. So I haven't completely decided how I'm going to do it, but I know for like the big things like the controlled substance laws, I'm going to compare my state versus the federal. So those big topics like that, I might have to go and read every single word of the chapters, but that'll benefit me in the long run. Other than having, what's federal versus what's my state, that's going to help me put it into categories and keep it straight.
What is there a law class? Did you already take the law class? And when I went to school back in the Stone Age, we actually came back, if I remember right, for like this 1 credit class at the very end. It was kind of neat. We all got to meet up and we did this kind of capstone thing. And it was like, hey, how's it going before we all kind of go off our different ways. What's Iowa do? Do they have a class at the end? Have you already taken the class?
Yeah, so we had a law class, and then we had a capstone class, and we took them at the beginning of January during our P3 year. So it was kind of a bad time in my opinion, because we had like 5 other classes going on at the same time, and it's over a year and a half away. So it's hard when it's so far away to really be dedicated to it.
I gotcha.
But I do believe maybe a week or so before we graduate, we have a week-long review where I think their plan is to do both NAPLEX and MPJE review. But I think that's just something they've started to implement.
Okay. Yeah, I that's great that you get to go back again. It's kind of cool where you've all kind of split up, you're gone your separate ways, and then you kind of come back and you get that one kind of last meeting with everybody. And my personal opinion has always been that once residency decisions come out, which they always come out in spring break. Like I couldn't pick like such a weird time for this to happen, right? And then if somebody has to go into phase 2, they have to spend their the punishment for doing phase 2 is having to spend your spring break doing letters of intent and resumes and all that again. But I guess the point I was trying to get to is when you get to a point where you get back and you see your classmates, that's really closer to May, June. But really, residency results come out in March. Are you able to find out who else is in your residency? Does the chatter on social media kind of like, hashtag blessed, I matched, to wherever? What kind of synergy have you seen in past classes, or maybe you've just not even kind of seen much of anything?
Yeah, so we have a group chat on Group Me, and so I think people will probably post their matches in that. Otherwise, I think probably I'll see a lot of it on social media. A lot of people like post screenshots.
Okay, so there is an opportunity kind of to start getting together and like, okay, well, we're both going to wherever it is, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, or maybe different parts of the country, where somebody could go and say, okay, these are the people that are going to be in my group, and maybe we could, kind of meet up and talk about making sure that we study and pass all of that stuff. So tell me a little bit about scheduling time. Some people do better in the morning, some people do better in the afternoon, some people do better late at night. How do you stay consistent with something that really isn't, it's like, well, it's due in June and, here we are in, August. How do you kind of keep on something that is such a long way out, but so critical in terms of getting it done?
Yeah, so it's a lot of like mental discipline. It's very challenging, but I know for me that I do not want to feel that like stress and impending doom that I would feel in
adenosine, impending doom.
if I didn't study for it now. I'm just trying to protect my own mental sanity, I guess, and that kind of drives me to study for it.
Okay.
And I know that I'm the kind of person that if I don't do something in the morning, I'm not getting it done. When I get home, as soon as I get home, I'm checked out from everything. So
Okay.
I knowing that's how I am, no, like that for me, I know that I need to get up early to do whatever I need to do.
Yeah, they say if you want to accomplish something, knowing yourself is the most important part of it, and knowing when you do well and do good in terms of your studies. So that's awesome. Well, if you would have any tips for those that are, most people are on their third block right now. They probably maybe have RX Prep as a doorstop, or they are thinking about getting it. What recommendation would you make? Because I feel like this is a motivation thing more than anything else. In terms of just getting started, like what would be the very first step for them to just get started and get past that initial, block of not being able to get things going?
I think that what's helped me is I looked through that RX prep book, and as I was going through, I literally went through the table of contents, and there were things that I saw like pulmonary hypertension. I don't know anything about pulmonary hypertension, so I saw that and I said, okay, well that's fair game for the NAPLEX. I need to prioritize that, and I need to study that. And it was kind of like a fun experience to look at something that I don't know anything about and learn about it. So that was it for me.
Oh, that's you know what, that's a BFO that I just never thought of. BFO is blinding flash of the obvious, and I feel silly for not having thought of it. But curiosity, and just taking your curiosity and saying, what would I be interested in learning, and what maybe haven't I ever covered, and say pulmonary hypertension. I know nothing about that. I wonder how that works. So that's awesome. That is a tremendously powerful motivator. And so maybe instead of looking at it as that whole a dragon that has to be slayed, it's more like that. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That you just say, okay, well, what am I really interested in here that I don't know much about? And just like, pulmonary hypertension. So awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, great. Any other recommendations you have?
The only other thing I was going to say is that when I made my study plan, the first thing that I put for my first cycle to study was math, because I like math.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily feel like studying if it's something that I like to do. And so I thought, well, if I start on a good note, then I can continue trudging along. And yes, there'll be some topics in there that I don't like, but I kind of sprinkled in with each cycle topics that I'm not as interested in, with topics that I do like and I am interested in. So it's kind of like a benefit reward for studying the things that I don't necessarily want to study.
You have gamified studying. That is awesome.
Yeah, I really have.
So if steak is your thing, eat the steak before the vegetables, or at least steak, vegetables, something like that. Well, awesome. Well, I know your advice is going to be really helpful to a lot of people, and I appreciate you being on the Pharmacy Residency Podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been the Pharmacy Residency and Money Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. You might want to check out our available residency audiobooks at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com/books, or you can get your first book free if you've never been on Audible before. You can work one-on-one with me to get a better residency that will better suit your career, health, and wealth at residency.teachable.com. Feel free to send an invite to Tony PharmD on LinkedIn, or email me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. Music was by Policy.